U.S. Marines discovered a hidden Japanese Hago tank amazed to find .50 cal bullets passed through. Jack Thompson's boots crunched against the dried leaves carpeting the forest floor of Maplewood, the earthy scent of pine and moss clinging to the brisk autumn air. As he meandered deeper into the woods behind his childhood home, memories flickered in the back of his mind, far away and nearly forgotten. The peacefulness of this rural haven contradicted the turmoil that simmered within him. Once a promising college student with dreams dancing on the horizon, now he was a retired Marine sergeant, still grappling with the weight of those decisions he had made a soldier's life over an academic career. On this particular morning, the aim was simple: scout for deer. But as he paused to catch his breath against the gnarled trunk of an ancient oak, the sunlight glinting off something a few yards away caught his eye, radiating a sense of foreboding. Intrigued, he stepped closer, his heart lodged in his throat. Hidden beneath a thick thicket of bramble was a relic from another era, its cold steel frame dulled by rust yet heavy with echoes of battles fought far from home. The sight of the Japanese Hago tank brought a rush of emotions that Jack thought he had buried deep within himself: anger, pride, sorrow. How often had a similar tank been a mere silhouette in his own distant memories? Tension uncoiled within like a taut wire drawn to breaking point when he discovered the .50 cal bullets embedded in the rusted carcass. The chilling realization sank in: they were remnants of a fight, a reminder of courage that Jack felt he had forsaken. The heaviness of choice pressed down, and he wrestled with it, dreams of academia lost, now replaced by the harsh realities of war. How could he reconcile this? Each bullet whispered a secret Jack wasn't sure he wanted to hear. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. An unexpected intrusion shattered his solitude as Danny, the troubled neighbor kid, approached. He looked up at Jack with a light of admiration shimmering in his eyes. Jack felt a bitter twinge in his gut. Here was this kid with his broken home life and a looming future filled with uncertainty looking to him for guidance. It made Jack want to hide, to brush aside the burden he carried. Yet, he couldn't ignore the pull of something deeper. Danny was wrestling with the same shadows he had faced before. As they began to clean the area, uncovering fractured histories and bits of rusted metal, Jack found solace in their shared purpose. But whispers of his community's growing interest echoed in his mind, blanketing him in an uneasy pressure. Would unveiling the tank's history place accolades upon him, or lay bare the wounds of war and sacrifice that haunted his own life? Each unearthed fragment called for recognition, yet a part of him longed to safeguard the secrets within that cold, steel shell stories meant only for two wandering souls. Yet, with every story he shared with Danny, he felt the scales of memory tip further towards anguish. Unease tangled with anger at his own past choices. How could he honor a history intertwined with sacrifice when it felt so alien to the life he lived now? The conflict churned within him, leaving threads of uncertainty dangling. He stood at a precipice, unsure whether he should leap forward into the community's scrutiny or pull back into the shadowy depths of secrecy. Then, as if wrenched from the pages of fate, a local historian approached with glimmering curiosity in his eyes and recognition for Jack's untold efforts. Jack's breath stilled. Was it validation or simply the unveiling of vulnerability? In that moment, the realization crashed on him: the very act of bringing the past to light could unravel him. On the edge of revealing everything, Jack's skin prickled. A gust of cold wind sweeping through the past was not yet done with him, and there were conversations waiting to break the surface. Jack's heart raced as he stared at the historian. The man's enthusiasm seemed insatiable, a gravitational force pulling Jack closer to unraveling truths he had only recently begun to confront. Was it courage that he needed, or was it an absurdity to even think of exposing himself to others again? Beneath the weight of recognition, Jack sensed an undeniable ultimatum: to share the burden of his past or to carry its shame alone. Danny's eyes flickered between them, filled with uncertainty and expectation. Jack caught the nervous glance of the boy and felt a surge of protectiveness, quickly overshadowing his own fears. Here he was, standing at the crossroads of his own redemption, and yet he could not even afford the luxury of self-doubt. What do I owe to this tank? He pondered. The question hung heavily in the air, and he was just beginning to grapple with the implications. That evening, as twilight cast a shadow over Jack's home, he found himself unable to settle. Memories pulsated with urgency, suffusing every corner of his mind. The rigid formations of marching troops, the crack of gunfire, the solemn sacrifices his life had danced around these echoes, but they had never fully belonged to him until now. Each bullet that passed through the tank was a part of a narrative he had long shunned. Perhaps, he mused, it was time to face those narratives, to reclaim what seemed lost. With Danny by his side, the two returned to the tank the following weekend. The local historian arrived, bringing with him a handful of eager history buffs, each with a spark of curiosity lighting their eyes. Jack felt a knot in his stomach. This was the spotlight he had dreaded. Would he fold under the pressure, or could he become the man he had always wanted to be? If he faltered here, it would only enforce the notion that he had made the wrong choice. As conversations flowed from theories about the tank's origins to anecdotes of valor, Jack listened intently. He felt his breath catch as stories swept through the group. Each shared word seemed to lift some of the weight he had carried for so long, lightening his spirit while simultaneously igniting his resolve. What had felt like an isolated chapter in his own life was now morphing into a universal struggle, a canvas woven from pain, memory, and resilience. But then, as he engaged with the newcomers, Jack realized something critical. Each question posed about the war felt intrusive, as if they were dredging up feelings he had contained. Was he equipped to handle this? Gripping the edge of the tank, he found himself drawn deeper into reflection. It occurred to him how often he had retreated from his past, afraid that displaying it would invite judgment or pity. Finally, the historian approached him, a knowing smile resting on his lips. Jack, would you tell us why this tank matters to you? The question hung in the air, echoing the uncertainty that Jack had been grappling with all day. With a deep breath, he began to share a piece of himself, the rusted steel a metaphor for his own scars. He spoke not of glory, but of what it meant to be human amidst the chaos. His voice quaked slightly, emotions spilling forth, an authentic confession filling the air. Yet, as he recounted his battle with memory, the shadows of his past crept back in insidious whispers. Who would he be on the other side of this moment? A sense of urgency gripped him. He was dancing along the edge of self-discovery, teetering between vulnerability and strength. Could this be his chance to finally seize control over his narrative? As the last rays of sun dipped low, a sense of finality washed over him. Jack realized that the journey of self-discovery had only just begun, and the words left unspoken still seemed vast. Each revelation pulled him further into an uncharted territory of his psyche. The historian leaned in closer, his eyes gleaming with unquenched curiosity. What happened next in your story, Jack? And in that single moment, Jack felt the history of his life surge around him, so much left to uncover, and yet so much already laid bare. He was on the cusp, ready to fly into the depths of his own past. Would he find solace or face a reckoning just as fierce as battle? The room fell silent as Jack's breath caught in his throat. His gaze fell to the ground, where memories congealed like smoke rising from a distant battlefield. His fingers gripped the edge of the tank as if it offered some form of safety. What happened next? The question reverberated within him, pushing against the walls he had built. Jack. The historian's voice slithered through the charged atmosphere, gently urging him to surface from the torrent within. Taking a deep breath, Jack straightened and glanced around at the attentive faces. A part of him wanted to retreat, to hide behind the armor of silence he had worn for so long. Yet, as he looked into Danny's encouraging eyes, he could feel a flicker of resolve. Another moment of truth awaited him. What happened next, he murmured, almost to himself as he considered the last time he looked back. Memories cascaded in a flash, a cacophony of sound and sight filling his mind. He recalled his time stationed in Japan, where despair and violence orphaned his sense of purpose. He remembered the heat radiating off the tank's steel, the acrid smell of smoke mingling with the stench of fear. In those dire moments, he had learned what it was to fight not just for survival but for meaning. "I was just a kid, scared and hopeful," he began, voice steadier now as he met the audience's eager gaze. "But I thought I could somehow make a difference." As he spoke, Jack felt fragments of himself returning, stitching together moments that had long felt lost. Each shared story of sacrifice made his own burdens feel lighter. He recounted the camaraderie shared among the troops and the inescapable guilt of loved ones left behind. A knot in his throat loosened as he navigated the delicate balance between regret and reflection. In this storytelling, something unexpected emerged. He discovered that perhaps his past didn't solely define him. But the longer he shared, the more pressing questions bubbled beneath the surface. Would revealing the depths of his experience strip him of the heroism he tried so desperately to wear? The historian prompted him to delve further, asking about specific battles and the emotional scars that lingered long after. Jack's chest tightened at the implication. "Why do you dwell on the pain of the past, Jack?" The question felt like a slap, though the historian's intent was not malevolent. It was an invitation to excavate, to confront. Jack faltered, the memories throttling his heart like a vice. Did he dwell? Or was he forging a path through the wreckage? He paused, inhaling sharply. "Because it's part of me," he replied, the weight of his statement palpably resonating within him. "Those moments shaped me, but they don't define who I am today." Each word was a stepping stone across a river of uncertainty. He felt something shift within, a burgeoning understanding that sank deeper than fear. Connecting with the curiosity of the crowd forged a bridge back to himself, allowing vulnerability to unspool freely. "Jack, what do you do now with all this?" Danny interjected, his young voice cutting through the hushed air. Jack's gaze rested on the tank. A towering symbol of his past now felt less like an anchor and more like a vessel for change. "I want to tell stories. Not just about war but about healing, about learning to thrive despite the scars." In that moment, the storm within his mind quieted, yielding to clarity. There was power in vulnerability, strength in honesty. Perhaps this was what he had been seeking all along, a direction for his life's narrative. Yet uncertainty still loomed. Would his newfound resolve withstand the test of time? As he continued to speak, his voice teetered on the edge of enthusiasm and doubt, grappling with an inner tempest that threatened to overwhelm his hard-won clarity. And, as the last notes of his confession lingered in the air, the crowd's approval felt like a wave, both exhilarating and terrifying. Was he ready to truly embrace this new direction, to see where it would lead him? He turned to the historian, summoning a sense of earnestness. "How do I make my voice count?" And as those words escaped his lips, Jack understood he stood at another precipice, the future etched with shadows yet to be confronted. The moment was ripe with possibility. Could he redefine his life not just as a chronicle of loss but as a testament of renewal? The answer hung tantalizingly close, yet just out of reach. Jack could feel the weight of the historian's gaze, heavy with expectation. "You've already taken the first step by sharing your story. The next step is to find how these stories resonate with others," the historian said, nodding slowly. Finding his footing felt tougher than it looked. "Resonate? I worry about the impact of these tales. Will they bring healing, or will they just dredge up more pain for others?" Each word felt like a challenge to his resolve, but he recognized he needed to grasp at the uncertainty rather than shrink from it. "You won't know unless you try. Consider your experiences not just as tales of survival, but as beacons for others navigating their own darkness. How do you feel about doing that?" The calmness of the historian's voice was grounding yet undeniably provoking. Reflecting on those words, Jack felt a pulse of energy. Here was a chance not merely to recount events but to act as a catalyst for empathy and growth. For months, he had been nursing the paralyzing fear that would surface whenever he contemplated sharing his narrative. How could he craft it into something meaningful? Crafting stories of healing, maybe I could conduct workshops. Provide a safe space for veterans to explore their experiences, he pondered aloud, surprising even himself. The notion hung in the air, vivid and compelling. It filled him with a fresh sense of hope. But lingering doubts pressed against his mind. Who was he to guide others? Jack instinctively increased his defenses. I'm scared. What if I fail? What if my own unresolved issues bubble up and overshadow the healing process? Exactly why you shouldn't back down, the historian insisted, leaning forward, his eyes ignited with intensity. Your vulnerability could be an essential part of the healing. You're not just a teacher, you're a fellow traveler on this road. A flicker of realization sparked within Jack a shift in perspective. Perhaps his vulnerability wasn't a weakness but a means to connect, to bind his wounds to those of others. But alongside that spark, a darker thought loomed. Would he ever be able to hold space for someone else's pain while still grappling with his own? I've spent so long learning to carry this burden by myself, he admitted, his voice laced with trepidation. To let others see the scars. It feels so risky. The biting honesty in his statement exposed an inner conflict he had tried to mask. That risk is where growth happens, Jack. True engagement isn't born from perfection. It's in facing your disarray and still choosing courage, the historian replied, steadying the conversation, allowing the silence to fill the air. The challenge resonated. What did courage mean for him now? What if stepping into the vulnerability of his experiences opened pathways not just for others, but for himself? A flood of fresh determination surged through him. I need to step out of my own shadow, Jack conceded, straightening his back as renewed conviction settled in his chest. Good. That's the spirit. Now what's your first step? The historian urged, eager to solidify this breakthrough. Jack hesitated, his chest tightening no longer from fear but recognition. I need to find a space. Connect with other veterans. I can start small, maybe a local community center. Each word felt like a new chapter beginning to unfurl as if life itself was making room for him. His grip on the tank eased, and its presence became a powerful reminder of resilience and purpose rather than an anchor. But as he ventured into that newfound determination, the haunting images of those battles still waited in the shadows, lurking just at the edge of his consciousness. Would they seep back into his life, threatening to unravel the foundation he was attempting to build? Once I start, I can't afford to fall back, he murmured, the doubt creeping back in, tasting bittersweet. But maybe that was the essence of risk, the dance between fear and hope. Turning to the historian, Jack asked, what if I step forward and find I can't cope? Then you confront it. It's all or nothing. You're not alone in this, the historian replied, gripping Jack's shoulder for reassurance, the connection electric. The words ignited a resolve that drowned out the uncertainty. Jack wondered if he was truly ready to face whatever lurked in the recess of his past. The tangible tension hummed in the air, daring him to take the leap. Tomorrow, I'll visit the community center. And with that resounding commitment, a flicker of fear danced inside him, but so did an exhilarating possibility. Would he unearth the strength to expand his narrative into the lives of others? The path ahead loomed vast, and the very essence of his story shimmered like a beacon. But even as his determination swelled, one question nagged at the edges of his mind: would opening up to others bring clarity, or would it draw forgotten shadows back into a light he wasn't ready to embrace? With the sun barely peeking over the horizon, Jack found himself pacing outside the community center, a swirl of emotions churning within him. Determination battled with trepidation, each heartbeat echoing in his ears like a distant artillery round. This was a space he had imagined as a sanctuary, yet here he stood, grappling with the enormity of his intentions. He paused, studying the familiar structure. Its faded paint and worn doors were oddly comforting. Yet, doubt seeped through. What if he stumbled? What if the past erupted in an uncontrollable deluge, sweeping away the fragile foundations he was trying to build. Taking a deep breath, Jack centered himself. The historian's words echoed in his mind, vulnerability as a strength. What if sharing his story not only helped others but also afforded him a chance to wrestle with, and possibly tame, his haunting memories? Reluctantly, he stepped inside. The lobby was alive with the sounds of laughter and chatter. Veterans were scattered about, some congregated around a table, recounting stories amidst playful jabs and camaraderie. Their laughter was infectious, yet Jack felt like an outsider peering through murky glass. He could hear snippets of their tales, moments of valor, hardship and sometimes heartache that seeped through the bravado. As he crossed the threshold into the main room, Jack felt himself freeze. This was at the moment he had envisioned. He could either hold back, linger in the shadows, or step into the light. Choosing the latter, he approached a small circle of men deep in conversation. "Hey, mind if I join you?" The words fell out before self-doubt could silence him. They looked up, welcoming him with warm smiles. The eldest, a grizzled man named Dave, offered a hand. "Of course. Welcome back." Jack squeezed Dave's hand, feeling the weight of expectations lift slightly. As they chatted, he realized the power of shared experience. Each talked about their battles, some fought on foreign soil, others the wars within their minds. By the time Jack spoke, he was fidgeting with the edges of his worn jacket, relaying his story, the good, the painful, and everything in between. "I've been thinking about running workshops," he confessed, his voice steadying. "A space for us to explore and process. Sharing stories, healing together." The room fell silent, save for the creak of a chair. It was a moment pregnant with vulnerability. What if their faces bore disappointment? What if they scoffed at his fragility? "So, you plan to lead this?" Dave ventured, eyes narrowing with curiosity. "What makes you think you're qualified?" Jack felt a jolt. Confrontation was among his greatest fears. "I'm not sure I am, but I believe our stories matter. I think they can guide us out of darkness." Dave nodded, the corners of his mouth lifting. "You're right. They can. But you know it won't be easy, right? You'll be confronting some heavy stuff, not just your own, but others." He didn't flinch. "I know. That's exactly why I'm here. If I don't step into that, what's the point?" Outside the circle, the walls seemed to close in for a heartbeat, but the conflicted emotions raced through Jack, igniting a command within him. "I'm not here to be perfect. I'm learning to carry this burden, and I want to help others carry theirs." Jack observed Dave's expression soften. "Then what's the first step?" "Reaching out, creating connections, starting with you guys," Jack responded, the urgency sharpening around his words. "If we can build trust here, maybe we can show others that they're not alone." "There's beauty in that," another veteran chimed in, "but are you ready for the heavy stuff? The memories? The anger?" Jack hesitated but didn't shrink back. "Those shadows won't define me. They'll be part of my story, but they won't hold me captive." They shared a knowing nod, and as conversations resumed, Jack felt a flush of belonging. The camaraderie forged in shared struggle was palpable, and he longed to harness that feeling in a workshop setting, an environment where vulnerability thrived among them. As the discussions buzzed around him, he questioned not merely what others needed from him, but what he could learn about himself through this process. Was he willing to stand in front of his fears, unearthing layers buried deep? "Tomorrow, I'll reach out to veterans I know," he thought, new resolve surging within. "I'll lay out a plan." But the knot of anxiety remained, not from fear of failure but from the profound realization that confronting these stories might bring forth more from his past than he was prepared for. Would this venture lead him toward healing, or would he tumble into an abyss he wasn't yet ready to face? In that moment, as he watched his new friends engage, he began to understand that the real challenges lay ahead. Jack had chosen a path that required more than just his strength, it demanded the courage to embrace his full self, shadows and all. And there, amidst the noise and laughter, he felt the tension shift again. This was merely the beginning. Would he have the fortitude to extract lessons from the past, even as it threatened to ensnare him? The answer loomed, stark and unforgiving, leaving a lingering question that echoed in silence. What would he do when the shadows beckoned? Jack awoke the next morning with urgency thrumming in his veins. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the well-worn floorboards, contemplating his first steps in forging the connection he had envisioned. A sliding door across the room filtered in pale sunlight, illuminating the half-open notebook beside him, filled with notes and ideas for the workshops he aspired to create. His heart raced as he flipped through the pages. The phrases jumped out at him: shared experience, narrative power, trust and vulnerability. They felt like a lifeline, pulling him away from his trepidation. But doubt always seemed to linger at the edge of his thoughts. Was he really equipped to guide others through their darkest moments? He shook his head, chasing the doubts away. Today was the day he would reach out. Resolutely, he picked up his phone and scanned through the contacts, each name a reminder of those who fought alongside him in battles both seen and unseen. It was time for a leap, a plunge into uncomfortable waters, a necessary step toward transforming his fear into action. Jack dialed the first number, his hand trembling slightly. Each ring felt like a countdown clock, the suspense mounting. Finally, a voice answered, followed by a rush of small talk and pleasantries. This veteran, Sam, had always been approachable, a reliable connection to the brotherhood Jack craved to feel more deeply. "Hey, Sam. It's Jack," he said, forcing a relaxed tone. "I've been thinking about getting some guys together, maybe starting some workshops to share our stories. You up for it?" Jack could hear the slight hesitation on the other end. "Workshops, huh? What do you mean?" "Just a safe space to talk about things, what we went through, how we cope." "I think it could help," he admitted, realizing how vulnerable he sounded. But vulnerability was his new mantra. "I don't know, man." "Sounds intense," Sam replied, skepticism lacing his words. Jack felt the punch of doubt return. What if his idea was too ambitious? "It is intense," Jack agreed, a sudden surge of conviction fueling him. "But that's the thing, we can't keep hiding from it. It's there whether we talk about it or not. It just festers. Together, we can find a way to face it." Silence filled the call for a moment, but instead of retreating into discomfort, Jack closed his eyes, envisioning the struggles they all shared. "I'd be honored if you brought your story to the table. I can't do this without you guys." Finally, Sam sighed. "All right, let us give it a shot. Just don't expect every guy to jump on board." "Every bit helps," Jack replied, relief flooding through him. Just like that, a seed was planted. As the day unfolded, Jack spent the afternoon reaching out to more veterans, riding the momentum now ignited within him. Each call made him feel lighter, the fear of rejection he had clung to starting to dissolve, replaced by the flicker of hope. He discovered a reservoir of connections he never appreciated before, souls willing to share their burdens. Yet, with each call, anxiety also crept in. What if their pasts were too much to carry in open conversation? What if his presence opened up wounds that would overwhelm them? He understood the delicate balance between healing and painful revelations. Each person he contacted carried their complexities, each story a haunting melody, its notes beautiful yet discordant. His mind spiraled for a moment, reflecting on what lay ahead: group dynamics, emotions raw and exposed, battles ignited. This was no simple endeavor. Perhaps the most painful realization was not merely the stories he would hear, but the possibility that confronting others' traumas might unearth his own buried memories, the shadows he'd sworn to reconcile. By evening, he sat at his kitchen table, surrounded by scattered notes, forms, and newfound numbers. His phone buzzed incessantly with returned calls and texts, some positive, some still too ambivalent. Jack read through the supportive messages, but he hesitated to respond. The reality that the shadows he sought to confront could awaken emotions unknown tightened his chest. In an unexpected moment of clarity, he remembered Dave's words about confronting the heavy stuff. It was now clear, he would lead, but he must also prepare himself for his own reckoning. They might not be the only ones processing trauma. He, too, could unearth layers of feeling he didn't even know were still there. As he mulled those thoughts over, Jack realized he was standing at the precipice of something significant. Each connection forged, every shared experience, carried the potential for profound change. He closed his eyes, gulping down the swell of anxiety that rose within him. But before he could lose himself to the emotions swirling in his mind, there it was a ring of a familiar name. It was an unexpected call from a distant friend, an old comrade who hadn't been part of his plan. The universe had tossed him a curveball, and all Jack could think was, what awaited him once he answered? That question lingered, heavy with promise and uncertainty, as his heart pounded like war drums claiming the space around him. What would this unexpected call reveal about his past, and how would it reshape the path he was forging? Jack's heart raced as he stared at the screen, the name glowing brightly in contrast to the dim light of his kitchen. It was a name he hadn't heard in years. Eli. Memories surged unbidden, reigniting feelings he thought he had tucked away for good. He had met Eli during deployment, a jokester with an uncanny ability to lighten the mood even in the gravest of times. He took a deep breath and answered, his voice shaky yet steady. Eli. Is that you? Jack. It's been a long time. Eli's voice rang with warmth, but there was an underlying tension that Jack quickly picked up on. It mirrored the uncertainty he had felt all day. Yeah, it has. I wasn't expecting your call, he replied, a slight edge creeping into his tone. What is going on? Listen, I heard about the workshops you're planning. That's all over the grapevine, Eli said, his tone shifting. I didn't think you were the kind of guy to dive into that kind of thing. Jack felt his stomach twist. Eli's skepticism mirrored his own internal doubts, crashing into the fragile confidence he had just begun to build. I've realized that sharing our stories might actually do some good. For me and for others, he said carefully, choosing his words like a surgeon selecting instruments. To dig into that stuff? It's risky, man, Eli replied, a shadow in his voice that didn't escape Jack. You sure you want to open those floodgates? Some stories drown people. The tension in Jack's chest tightened again as he fought against the residual fear clawing at his insides. I know it's intense, Eli. But I can't just sit back anymore. I want to help, but I also think I need it too. His declaration hung in the air, bold yet vulnerable. He knew he was confessing not just to Eli, but to himself, admitting that he, a soldier trained to endure, needed to confront the weight of his experiences. The fear could no longer dictate his choices. How's that working out for you? Eli asked, a hint of humor attempting to slip back into the conversation. Jack chuckled reluctantly, it's terrifying, to be honest. But I think that's part of it. I see potential in all of us to push past the pain. There was silence at the other end, the kind that buzzed with unspilled words. Finally, Eli spoke, look, if you need somebody to help or share my story, I'll join. But just know, once the floodgates are open, you can't unsee what's lurking inside. Are you in or not? Jack affirmed, the weight of his resolve propelling him. I'll think about it, Eli responded. Jack could hear the gears turning, the cautious mind of a man who had seen too much. Hours later, after they wrapped up their conversation and Eli was just a memory on the line, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that it hadn't just been a casual chat, it was a reckoning. Eli had opened up a door into his past, one that he never expected to unveil. Reflecting on the conversation, Jack felt a creeping dread and exhilaration mingling within him. He recognized that if Eli was wavering, it was likely because he shared the same fears, a confrontation with ghostly memories and shadows that wouldn't easily disperse. Perhaps Eli didn't just need the workshop, they both needed each other. As Jack stood from the table, an idea struck him like a lightning bolt. The fear he sensed in Eli mirrored something deeper, his own unresolved trauma. What if part of leading this group meant he'd have to face his own demons first? The thought gripped him. Perhaps digging deeper into their stories would shed light on his darkness too. He was not just creating a platform for healing, he was drafting a roadmap for himself in tandem. The ringing of his phone interrupted his thoughts once more, this time displaying a number he didn't recognize. An anxious tingle skittered up his spine. As he answered, he could already sense that this call could tip the balance of everything he had planned, be it in support or sorrow. The voice on the other end was familiar yet haunting, sending a thrill down his spine, and Jack realized he was about to open yet another door, one that promised to either shatter his courage or fortify it. "Jack, it's Sam again," the voice crackled through the line. "We need to talk." Jack braced himself, the weight of his fears pushing against the possibilities of what this conversation could bring. What uncertainty loomed just beyond this threshold? Jack steadied himself against the cool edge of the kitchen counter, feeling the oppressive air thicken around him as Sam's voice echoed in his mind. Each word was a delicate thread weaving through his anxiety, unraveling the tapestry of what he thought was securely stitched together. "What is it, Sam? What's so urgent?" Jack's voice came out steadier than he felt, yet doubt knotted in his stomach. There was too much history between them, too many unresolved issues lurking in the shadows of their shared past. "I can't say much over the phone," Sam replied. "Meet me at our old spot, the diner. We need to talk in person." The diner. The very place where countless memories gathered like dust in an old attic. Jack remembered the last time they had met there, conversations filled with laughter had given way to silences heavy with regret. A part of him hesitated, contemplating the weight of dredging up the past with someone whose relationship had become strained. Yet something else stirred within him, a flicker of determination illuminating the darkness. "Okay, I'll be there," he responded, even surprising himself with the conviction that floated in his voice. Turning off the phone, he felt the weight of inevitability settle over him. He wasn't just meeting Sam, he was confronting not only a friend but also remnants of a life that had shaped him irrevocably. Driving to the diner took longer than he anticipated. Each stoplight felt like an eternity, and the echoes of conversations past screamed at him to reconsider. Would revisiting that space bring clarity or chaos? Jack had already begun this journey of sharing their experiences and learning to heal, but a confrontation loomed, subtly pushing him towards a precipice he hadn't yet understood. The thought of uncovering deeper truths within himself sent a shiver down his spine. As he walked through the diner door, the familiar smell of coffee and bacon engulfed him. The bell over the door chime seemed to mock his trepidation. Jack scanned the booths, locating Sam slouched in a corner, an untouched cup of coffee in front of him. The waiter avoided their table, sensing the tension brewing. "Hey," Jack said, sliding into the seat opposite. "What's this about?" Sam leaned forward, his brow furrowed, eyes darting around. Let me just say I've been thinking about everything. Us. The fallout. You know how things got." He paused, searching for the right words, uncertainty flaring in his gaze. "The workshops you're planning, I think it's a good thing, but you have to brace yourself for what might come out. Old wounds, Jack. They're raw." Jack felt a burning knot of frustration twist in his gut. "I'm aware, Sam. This isn't my first rodeo with emotions," he replied, sharper than he intended. "But it's necessary for me and whoever else decides to step forward. They deserve a chance to heal." A flicker of vulnerability escaped him, and he leaned back, unsure if he had struck too hard or too soft at the core of their conversation. "That's just it. How do you think it's going to go?" Sam countered, his tone rising slightly. "These conversations aren't just going to fix things. They might open wounds that can't be closed again. I don't want to see you get hurt, man." Hurt. That word felt like jagged glass caught in his throat. Jack narrowed his gaze, feeling the discomfort of confrontation bear down. "I already am hurt," he asserted, the glaze of frustration hardening into resolve. "I'm tired of burying it. The only way I move forward is if I confront what's behind me. The exchange hung heavily between them, laden with unarticulated fears. Sam shifted, the silence thickening, almost palpable. It was a confrontation wrapped in a struggle, a desire to protect entwined with a need to express, both men wrestling with their own histories. As Sam opened his mouth to speak, a new realization coursed through Jack. This profound need to create space for his own truth had ignited a more expansive purpose. He wasn't just confronting his fears, he was making a declaration of sovereignty over his narrative. Could Sam see that? And would this conversation create another layer of understanding, or shift into a battleground of unresolved tension? The sound of their shifting teacups echoed through the diner, awakening a swarm of memories and half-forgotten stories that lingered just out of reach. "Jack," Sam said finally, his voice clipped but earnest. "What if, in seeking closure, you just reopen everything? What if we can't go back?" For Jack, the question reverberated too sharply to ignore, a foreshadowing danger lurking. Would closure ever truly be possible? The weight of that truth pushed against him, but within, fragments of hope glimmered. Yet here they were, two soldiers in the war of their lives, about to engage in the battle neither had prepared for. What new realizations awaited him within the depths of their conversation? What would he unearth next, and would it fortify or unravel him? The answers loomed like shadows, ready to confront him. With Sam at the table, it felt as if every word exchanged would charge a revelation, waiting to topple everything he thought he knew about healing. "Let's dig in," Jack murmured, ready to face the truth. Jack's heart raced as he stared at Sam, the silence stretching like an elastic band ready to snap. The weight of unfinished business throbbed in the narrow space between them. He could see in Sam's eyes a mix of concern and respect, a silent invocation that they were at a crossroads, one that required a navigation of shared pain. "Let's talk about the past then," he said, his tone more resolute than he felt. "You've always held back. What are you really afraid of?" Sam flinched but didn't back down. "I'm afraid you might break, Jack. Once we start digging, there's no saying what will come up. We've both buried things for too long." The mention of buried things struck a chord deep within Jack. He felt that weight, dragging him down into moments he wished to forget. But now, as the tide of his emotions began to rise, he recognized something pivotal: running from these memories would only deepen the scars. It was time to confront them. "Breaks can lead to healing," Jack countered, internal determination swelling. The fresh scent of coffee washed over him, yet he felt suffocated by what remained unspoken. "And I don't want to just skate over the surface. I want to go deep." A flicker of admiration crossed Sam's face. "You're serious, aren't you? You want to really peel back the layers?" He paused, gauging Jack's intensity. "Okay, let's start then. Let's talk about the workshop. Why does it matter to you?" Jack asked, leaning in, narrowing his focus. "You've always shut down opportunities for me. It's like you were waiting for me to fail." Anger flashed in Sam's eyes, the tension brewing once again. "That's not true. I didn't want to see you get hurt again. You've been through enough." Jack swallowed hard. It was a familiar but delicate point of contention. Why was it always about shielding him? "I need to open those wounds, remember them, and let them bleed. It hurts, but this is how I learn. If we don't face it, we'll be stuck in the same loop forever." They were no longer just friends navigating emotional territory, they were two men wrestling with the fragility of their self-concepts, guardedly reaching towards understanding. Sam's defenses were crumbling, the walls he built around his concerns beginning to slip. "I know about your father," Sam said, his voice steady albeit strained. "About the rage and the way it shaped you. But you need to be careful. That path has its own dangers." Jack's breath hitched, like a pin dropped in a quiet room. His father. The crux of many of his fears. "You think I should just ignore the past?" He felt the familiar rush of anger combined with a potent wave of vulnerability. "I can't. I want tea. Sam looked away, the tightness around his lips suggesting a struggle of his own. You can't carry that burden alone. I know you want to handle it yourself, but leaning on people doesn't make you weak. It means you have strength. The vulnerability in Sam's voice pierced through Jack's walls. He recalled countless times when he had shielded his emotions, convinced self-reliance was his only option. But now, with each second, it became evident that healing required partnership, that reaching out meant creating a path forward rather than retreating into solitude. I need you in this, Jack said slowly, finally embracing the shift within himself. I can't navigate everything that's coming alone. Sam was silent for a moment, the tension in the diner palpable, the other customers mere background noise. Maybe I need you too, he finally whispered, the concession opening up the atmosphere between them. Jack realized that they were inextricably linked, their narratives intertwined, woven together by shared histories and unhealed wounds. The walls were melting, revealing the raw humanity within them both. But even in this moment of clarity, a deeper fear niggled at Jack's mind. Would they be able to handle what lay beneath the surface? Or would this honesty expose fissures too large to mend? Something in the air thickened, layered with unexamined truths, fierce and unrelenting. Are we really ready? Jack questioned, the uncertainty tangling with the promise of vulnerability. As he sought Sam's gaze, he felt enveloped by doubt. Was this truly the beginning of a transformation or just the prelude to a painful unraveling? What lay beneath the veil of the past, and would they uncover the strength to confront it together? The question echoed ominously in his mind, tinged with both fear and an unexpected thrill. Jack leaned forward, staring into Sam's eyes, feeling the tension bubble beneath the surface. We can't keep dancing around this forever. It's the only way we're going to heal. Sam shifted uncomfortably, but Jack held his gaze. He knew they were straddling a precipice, and it terrified him. You're right, Sam finally conceded. But that means exposing everything. Are we prepared for what comes next? Yes. Jack's voice was firmer than he anticipated. I can't hide any longer. We have to face our ghosts, otherwise, we're letting them win. His own words resonated deeply within him, every syllable carrying the weight of a lifetime spent avoiding his past. With newfound resolve, he took a breath to gather his thoughts. It's in confronting the past that we become stronger. Sam clasped his hands, visibly wrestling with his emotions. The past is exactly why I've been so protective of you. You know what happened when you let the emotions rule you, Jack. Jack felt a pang of vulnerability, a distant echo of old feelings when he thought emotions made him weak. But he was no longer a young soldier trying to bury fear beneath stoicism. I've learned that it's okay to be afraid, he said, his voice poignant. It's all about processing those fears, working through them. When I share, I take back the power that those memories hold over me. The atmosphere shifted, and Jack could feel the mutual understanding taking shape between them. For so long, he had wanted to fill the shadows with light, hoping others would follow him into that warmth. What if we create this workshop as a place of safety? Jack suggested, his heart pounding with excitement. We could invite guys we trust, and we facilitate open conversations, just like we're doing now. An unexpected smile broke across Sam's face, and Jack felt a rush of triumph. The idea ignited something within them both, revealing the possible journey of transformation ahead. I think we're onto something, Sam said slowly. If we frame it in a way that emphasizes healing, maybe it won't feel so daunting. Jack nodded, pride swelling in his chest. Exactly. The goal isn't just to dive into pain, but to dig for understanding and connection. The stories we tell could lead to breakthroughs, not just for us, but for others too. I can help you spread the word, Sam replied, no longer a specter of doubt but a solid partner ready for action. As they exchanged ideas, the weight that had once burdened their friendship seemed to lighten, revealing a path where they both could grow. The conversation flowed effortlessly, and Jack felt the boundaries he had built slowly dissolving. Each idea spoken aloud brought them closer to their goal, a cohesive vision that transcended fear. It would manifest as a safe space for veterans to confront their traumas while forging bonds of camaraderie and support. But we need to be honest about our struggles, Sam cautioned, the seriousness returning to the discussion. If we're to facilitate this kind of space, we have to show our own vulnerabilities. Jack swallowed hard. That means being open about everything, our experiences, the pain, and how it shaped us. Exactly, Sam agreed. If we can't expose our own wounds, how can we expect others to? They locked eyes, and in that moment, a silent pact was formed. Jack felt the seeds of true transformation take root within them, confidentially navigating their pasts while lighting a path for others to follow. Jack inhaled sharply, the weight of his past now invigorating him instead of weighing him down. This is where my story begins. And it can also be where theirs begins too. With renewed clarity, Jack left the diner feeling lighter, his heart a little less burdened. Each step forward was an act of reclaiming his narrative. For the first time in years, he felt a surge of confidence as they moved toward a purpose that could transform not just individuals but entire lives. He knew there would still be moments of doubt and revisited memories, but he understood now that healing is a continuous process, filled with challenge and grace. As days turned into weeks, Jack worked tirelessly with Sam. They reached out to veterans, crafting a shared manifest that spoke of stepping into vulnerability and developing understanding amongst peers. Slowly but surely, faces appeared sensing their common struggles, drawn to the light shining from their stories. And in the process, Jack watched himself blossom alongside his comrades, discovering aspects of himself he didn't even know existed. When the day of the first workshop arrived, Jack stood at the front of the room, a raw sense of emotional transparency flowing through him. The nervousness he had anticipated transformed into excitement, filling him with purpose. In this moment, he achieved what he had sought: a sanctuary, a community, and ultimately, a powerful connection to his past that liberated him. He was not running from it, but embracing it, proving that courage blossomed through honesty. As the circle of veterans leaned in, exchanging stories, the laughter, the tears, they forged new paths of connection that reshaped their identities. Jack was the vessel through which healing began, not just for himself but for so many others. A flicker of pride coursed through him as he realized he stood at a crossroad, no longer tethered by pain but empowered by resolve. He had emerged from the shadows, his heart open, and his spirit renewed. This journey had transformed him from a soldier at war with himself into a leader drawing others toward the light. Now, as he opened the floor for dialogue, Jack embraced each voice that filled the room. No longer alone, he reveled in the gentle rhythm of shared struggles, each story a crucial thread weaving together a tapestry of hope, healing, and strength. And in that moment, he understood, he was not defined by loss but rather by the powerful resilience that emerged through it, a true testament to the human spirit's capability to thrive. This was indeed the beginning of a new story, one of unity, healing, and newfound resolve. A reflection of the personal triumphs he had long sought, manifesting in a deeply fulfilled life rich with purpose and connection. As Jack left the workshop, he soared with a confidence that only comes from overcoming, no longer a soldier haunted by the past, but a man living fully in the present, shaping a future that beckoned with promise. Now, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your voice matters. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending, and together, let us uplift others with stories of personal growth and resilience.